Hello, gentlemen. Hello, Netherlands. Hello, Canada. Hello, Europe. Hello, Romania. Hello, USA.
Yeah.
Hello, Finland. West Virginia. Hi, Andy. Philippines. Incredible. Norway. Incredible. Every time we're rapping around the world. Hello, guys.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sure that people want to hear. Awareness Daily is tuning in from Mars. So he made it there. Hello, Awareness Daily. And even on Mars, people want to know, what do the students of the wisdom of Kabbalah have to say about the assassination attempt on one of the presidents of the United States. Hello, Peru. Okay. Here we are, guys. First of all, we're not a political show. We're not on the right. We're not on the left. We don't take sides regarding politics. We don't take sides regarding any of these kind of things. We are looking at because it all came from one source anyway. We're looking at it like it's night, it's day, it's up, it's down, it's right and left. What are the forces that are operating on reality? And when we see it with our eyes, what can we learn about it? How are we going to talk to you about the spiritual worlds? With what words are we going to use? If spirituality is beyond time, space, and motion, so with what eyes are you going to see it? With what hand are you going to touch it? With what tongue are you going to taste it? With what nose are you going to smell it? There's no way. So we're given this corporeal world, this material world, in order to start learning how the system operates. In fact, in the past, Kabbalists had to learn the sciences of this world in order just to understand how the forces interacted with each other, because everything in this world is coming from the upper world. So when we talk about things in this world, we're talking about it in order to understand who we are, what are the forces operating in this world, and then from that, extrapolate what's going on above us in order to understand. We're using the language of this world in order to
Mhm.
understand what's behind the veil. If you see
Mm.
the puppet go like this
Yeah.
and then the puppet go like this, you understand there's a puppet master behind that's going like this and going like
Hmm.
this. We're not saying there's a puppet master. We're saying there's forces behind everything, and there's a thought that
Hmm.
that put
You know,
that
I
into motion.
I just realized something. This is
Yeah.
like related to a discussion we had a couple minutes before we went on air. There's something that Kabbalists like Baal HaSulam really tried to do. Baal HaSulam, Rabash, and even before them, but since just in the last few hundred years, let's say, Kabbalists really tried to explain to people, and again, especially Baal Sulam, since like the previous century, to explain to people that there is such a thing for anyone who's interested in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that there is such a thing as the system that you mentioned of roots and branches, how there are hidden forces, spiritual forces that govern govern everything in reality, everything in nature, everything in our world, and they manifest in our world through everything that happens. But when Kabbalists talk about those things that happen in our world, they're doing that to point to reference the roots, the spiritual forces. And in a sense, we're kind of, but it was very important to Bala Sulam to explain that there is such a thing, because that was the whole problem with the wisdom of Kabbalah being like publicized before its time, that people would materialize it, and people would think that when the Kabbalists say an ox or a cow or a sky or a firmament or the ocean or something, they would think that that's what they're talking about, because that's the only reality we know. But they're using these words only because there are no words in spirituality. There are no words to
So
describe spiritual
HVAC
forces.
tips, who I don't recognize. So hello, HVAC tips. And by the way, I have huge HVAC problems at my house.
Hmm.
Downstairs is freezing and upstairs is hot, and it's always a problem. So if you happen to be in Jersey, let me know. But HVAC tip says, just tell us in plain English. And the problem is what Asaf just said. Imagine you have a baby in your house, right? And he's just telling the baby in English what exactly, in the simplest English possible, what to do. He still doesn't understand. Not only that, like if you have someone who's not a race car driver
Mhm.
and he's a great race car driver and he's explaining to you how he does what he does in the car to win the Formula One, it doesn't matter even if he's using plain English. If you don't have any experience of what the G-force on your neck is like and what it's like to be like this for 2.5 hours to hold your head, like if you don't understand the forces in that situation, even if he uses the language, you don't have any emotional connection
Yeah.
to what's happening. Now, HVAC Tips asks another question. What's the secret of how all these people have all this money and the poor people have numbers but don't do anything about it? Okay, so this is something we can
Hmm.
start to talk about. And this has to do with
Yeah.
the whole structure of reality. So let's get into the conversation and see if through the through this roundabout conversation we can start understanding what is the structure and what's going on. And we had someone who just joined from Ghana. So that's
Great.
unbelievable. So hello.
All right.
Okay, so first of all, first advice from the students of Kabbalah that we have is we have to rem is start separating ourselves from the fiction. So, for example, again, we're not a political podcast. We're not talking about politics. And as Asaf reminded me, if it happened from the right wing to the left wing, it would they would have done the exact same thing. And if it was the left wing to the right wing, they would do the exact same thing. So both sides are guilty of exactly the same thing. But after President Trump, one of the news outlets ran this headline: Trump escorted away after loud noises at Pennsylvania rally. So if this was the news, is this if
Yeah.
this is the place that you got your news, so you read the headline and you move on with your life.
Yeah.
He was escorted away after loud noise at a rally. Okay.
Yeah, I gotta
So
say
you
that
can see,
there were a few
yeah,
headlines like that that I followed, and it's like because there was something happened, right? And it seemed like I would follow, like I looked at headlines from different media outlets, and I mean, in our world, media doesn't just tell you the news, it tells you the news with an agenda. It tells you the news with a certain goal in terms of swaying you one way or another. So you could see
And it only tells
how,
it to you basically in a headline form too,
and in
because
a
they know
headline,
everyone just
of
reads the headline.
course, exactly. They know that 90% of the people don't even bother to read the text. So you could clearly see in the first hours how, the left-leaning media is basically just explaining that Trump fell, or he just fell on
They actually said
stage,
that too, right? That was a
or
word that they
what
used.
was
That
there was
what
another
fell on
headline
stage.
like some commotion happened and he was escorted on stage, like just basically not downplaying, not even mentioning that there was an assassination attempt. And on the right leaning media you would see, in this case, you would see just that there was an assassination attempt, and then you would see that after a few hours the tone has changed, because there came a point where, like, okay, everyone knows everything at this point. It's like it doesn't make sense anymore to to try to downplay it. And then it came to a point where it's like, okay, everyone is now saying there was an assassination attempt. So I mean that uh, just kind of shows us where we are, huh? We think about the media, the mainstream media, as news. We think about us looking like it's windows into what's happening in the world, and it's really far from windows into the world. It's more like windows into what someone wants to get out of you, whether it's they want your
this
money or
already
your vote,
goes
or
to
yeah.
this already goes to HVAC Tips question. Why about all of these poor people with all these numbers, but they can't do anything about it? And very clearly, before we even get into the secrets of the universe, the people in power hire professionals who know how to work on our tiny little egos. These little
Hmm.
egos that you just throw him a cookie and he forgets about all the facts. He forgets about his life and he just follows that headline. They know exactly how to operate us. And if we want to start moving ahead and discovering the truth for anyone who wants to, so first thing we need to do is start separating ourselves from the fiction. And the fiction's coming from both the right and the left. Um, this, guys, I'm going to take a jump for a second. I want to show you something else. Okay. So first of all, we put that on the table. This is another piece of data here to look at. This is the guy turned his head at the exact moment, I guess, that the shot was fired.
Oh, this I
And
saw I saw a different one that shows
you saw this one
like a
probably, right?
yeah, that's the one.
So he
Yeah.
turns his head as the shot is fired and it grazes by his
Yeah.
ear.
So someone
So,
basically 3D modeled his head and like simulated how close this was, right? Like
yeah,
basically.
right.
Right.
And I think it was like
That's
two
crazy. Just
bullets.
seeing it like that is really crazy.
Uh-huh.
That's really good. That
So,
really is. I mean, also just think about if you're Trump, besides the fact that he was just catapulted into, winning the presidential race basically as a result of that, I'm sure he got, I mean, when anyone has a near death experience, there's something psychologically that happens. And I'm sure he's replaying that moment over and over in his head of
oh
how a
yeah.
bullet going, thousands of meters per second went like, he could have been a watermelon, a bullet hitting a watermelon explosion kind of. We could have
Mm-hmm.
seen a completely different reality
Yeah.
if that was just, so I'm sure he has plenty of thoughts about it, but also so does the public, and the whole world was basically watching this
Yeah.
unfold. And maybe
Yeah.
someone initially thought he got a mosquito on his ear or whatever, but then when you see it like that, that really puts it puts the whole thing into a different perspective.
Seth, you wanted to because um
No.
yeah, just keep going because
First, I
I
wanted to get your reaction, and
no,
depending on where that
to
goes.
me the reaction is when you see like these demonstrations like the 3D model that shows his head or the other video with the crosshair and you you see how close this was, like literally millimeters away. That's what we're talking about. Now, it's millimeters away from Trump's head, it's millimeters away from a successful assassination, it's millimeters away from a presidential candidate being assassinated. But what would really happen if it was millimeters away? Right? What reality would we be in right now? America, the world. I mean, this is something I think this is not exaggerated to say we could have seen civil war happening as a result of that.
And
Or
isn't it also so right? So a millimeter, right? And I think that if we start pulling back the veil, this is very dramatic, but we could probably discover all day long how we're all millimeters of like things like we don't understand that if I didn't make that right turn and I made that left turn instead, what have happened? She called me, so I stopped and took a phone call, and who knows what, like all day long, there's so many coordinated things.
that's
That's
another
one piece of it.
perspective. Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
piece of it is
So like
some,
every day, all your day, you're millimeters away from all kinds of things happening,
yeah,
basically, and you're just not
oh
seeing
yeah.
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another
Yeah.
piece is here you have some kind of like losery kid. I don't know the kid personally, but some kid, it doesn't look like he got out into the sun much. Apparently, he was like bullied a lot, like not on anyone's radar, affecting the most powerful man in the world. Like, well, we don't think of any of these people as the most powerful, but in the normal
At least by earthly
world of
standards.
people,
Yeah.
by earthly standards, he's one of the most powerful people in the world. So how is it that you have people out there every day trying to make a difference, and yet some kid
Mm-hmm.
who's not registering on anyone's
Yeah.
radar
Yeah. Yeah.
could affect the entire world?
Yeah. It just shows you like how volatile,
If
unstable,
it was because of this
fragile
kid that
everything
Trump
is.
wins, or if he killed
Mm-hmm.
him and it was because of him that some kind of civil unrest happens,
Mm-hmm.
like how is this whole thing, and how is Trump somehow even connected with this kid on some other level because the action
Mm-hmm.
of that kid fulcrumed him? So like this huge web of forces
Mm-hmm.
that we're seeing in front of us. And
Yeah.
first things first, let's try and peel back. It's not even about Trump. It's not about the kid. What we want to see is what the heck is going on in this world, because the same way we were millimeters away from a bullet hitting Trump. How many millimeters away are we from World War III? Like, are we running at full speed towards a full war?
Right.
Yeah,
And
and it, first of all, the presidential assassination. First that's crazy. In that we live in that time, and the only other time that's happened, I think, was 40 years ago with Reagan. Everyone keeps bringing that up, right? But are we even really? The question kind of is: are we even really that surprised? I don't think people were really surprised that something happened. I mean, you can even see that the FBI or the Secret Service released some 2024 risks report or whatever, abroad and national threats that could possibly happen. And of course, they're talking about internal, external terrorism, everything. They saw that there was a high potential for this to happen, especially if you just look at, I mean, if you just look at the debate that took place, there was no real debate. It was just people trash talking each other. I mean, it's just hate, it's just basically hate going back and forth. So, question kind of is, was anyone even surprised that this happened? And if you say no, then that kind of already tells you a little bit about the state of the matter. But also, this kid, it was just kind of the perfect recipe, the perfect recipe, but it actually could have just been anyone that was just pushed over the edge a little bit. I'm sure there's a whole list of, a whole line of people waiting to kind of maybe commit a certain similar act. And if it wasn't then it was before. And maybe there was even times before that we didn't even know about where it was foiled and something happened, right? So yeah, we're seeing it's not just this kid and he's like propped up on a pedestal, but it was just kind of this like a maturation of events, the perfect recipe, the perfect cocktail. This kid went up there, who knows? We can dissect this whole thing over and over and over again, but just to look at just the threads that are, or I guess you could even say the gears that are kind of moving, connecting and moving everything. And like Seth said, a millimeter away every day of your life, you're kind of like avoiding things or seeing things almost avoided. Everything's just so tightly wound and connected. And this is just another example of how we can kind of see it's just like there's no wiggle room, really.
I want to open up something that you just touched on, Chris. The is Are we really surprised? That's a big one. We should give that a second, right? I mean, what we've seen a couple of days ago, where that 20-year-old guy, ultimately goes onto a roof and, with a rifle and tries to assassinate a president, a presidential candidate. I mean, that's just an outcome. That should be obvious to everyone who has a brain in society. We understand that a 20-year-old person, he didn't come up with all of this, the motivation and logic and rationale. And no, he is a result of some much bigger influence. When we look at what's happening in politics, when we look at the political division, when we look at the social division that goes along with it, when we consider the animosity and the hostility that exists between two sides of a nation, when we consider the ongoing rhetoric that awakens violent tendencies in people from one side to the other side, and from the previous side back to that side, and this constant cutthroat kind of attitude and social climate that we're living in. When go back to the past a little bit, I remember all kinds of Hollywood celebrities a couple years ago, I think in the previous presidential campaign before Trump got elected or something like that. But I remember a bunch of very, very violent, violence-encouraging displays. There was some actor who held like Trump's head as a like a doll.
We did a show even about that. Kathy Griffin.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. There was that. There was someone else, some rapper who made it look like he's shooting Trump. There was another one who talked about famous actor talked about punching him. I mean, and again, for all the immediate knee-jerk reactions in our audience who might be thinking that we're only looking at one side.
Right.
there are definitely
Oh, they cover it. You can't even see the
They
picture.
calls for
covered it.
violence. There
Wow,
we
look at
go.
that. Hold on, let me refresh
CNN
that and see
cuts
if they can
ties
let you
with
see the photo.
yeah. So that
Yeah,
I
there
mean
it
that
is.
happened.
Yeah, yeah. She got in
Okay, so
trouble for
that
that.
happened a couple of years ago. But I mean, okay, so that's just an example. But what I'm trying to say is, are we really surprised, like Chris said? You know, when ultimately, after years of violent rhetoric and examples and this constant kind of push that we have, and again, it's not just one side, it's just the climate. That's where we are. It could have easily happened on the other side as well. That is the kind
Oh,
of
you know what? And
system
because
that we're
they're
in.
opening up they're saying we're trying to get into this guy's phone and try to figure out what his
Yeah,
motivation
yeah,
was. We can't figure out the motivation.
exactly. It becomes, where are we living? Like, I mean, are
I'll
we?
tell you. I'll tell you where we're living. Okay, this is where we're living. Watch.
No,
You
but I
have
mean, do these Secret Service investigators or whatever? They're actually like, I mean, they have to do their protocol, right? Like look for the motivation and but I mean, it's
Yeah.
so obvious what's happening.
no, it's
Everything is
not
so
obvious,
obvious.
and this is
Hmm.
exactly why the
Hmm.
problems that HVAC tips ask for. So here, for example, right, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife.
Hmm.
The Chan, his wife's last name is Chan. So the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative announced 44 million in funding to address promising technologies to address climate change, right?
Uh-huh.
$44 million from Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah.
And his $300 million super yacht,
Uh-huh.
that
Hmm.
is right, and his private jet made 28 trips in 2 months, emitting 17 times more carbon than the average American does. But
Uh-huh.
he put $44 million in funding, and this is what goes out in the advertisement, right?
That's
Very
Uh-huh.
good.
similarly,
Hmm.
the U.S. government now created pretty much the most inflationary government budget like in the history of the world. Our debt is increasing $1 trillion every 100 days. Okay.
Wow.
You know what
Whoa.
they called it? We joked about this a few times with
Hmm.
Citizens United and the other thing. You know what they call this? The Reduction Act. That's the name of it. They're
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
spending the debt is going up $1 trillion every 100 days, and this is called the Inflation Reduction Act. So
Right.
it's they understand how to play with our simple
Yes.
egos. And if,
Yeah.
first of all, we're not running away to a cave anywhere, everybody. There's no other planet that we can escape to. We have someone here who joined us from Mars today, but besides him, once Elon colonizes Mars, we'll break it to you now. The same crap is going to happen there. Actually, we'll have intergalactic warfare. That's what'll happen next. The Martians will want
Hmm.
stuff from the Earth, and they'll exploit them, and then make sure that they get their supplies. If they don't pay them, it'll be the exact same thing unless we solve this problem. It doesn't matter where we go. So if we want to get through this, there's no other planet to run away to. There's no box to put ourselves in, but we have to start being able to sort out where we're putting our energy and where we're focusing. And more, if we cut out this absolute BS, then it dies, it withers, it goes away naturally, just like a plant. If you don't feed that crap, you don't feed those news outlets that BS, so it doesn't get fed anymore.
That's
But
hard.
they just
That's
hook
hard.
us, right? Because all day long, we're the one feeding the lies, all
Okay,
of us.
I want to deepen the context of our discussion for a second, because I mean, we've said it in the beginning as sort of a like an initial disclaimer. I mean, our goal, our interest, our focal point is to dig deeper and deeper to find a connection between what's happening in the world and the operating system of reality, as Kabbalists explain it to us. The operating system of nature, the guiding program that guides human development and pushes us in a certain kind of trajectory of human development. And that's what we really are interested in exposing and uncovering through the trappings of what is happening in the world, be it the mainstream media and how that works, and the social climate and how what that produces, and the violent actions that come as a result, and an assassination attempt. And so I mean, let's go as deep as we can with that. So we've already, I think anyone who has a basic understanding of social psychology, and I mean, this is not just, it's not just we're saying it. This is something that you can hear people like, who was it? Jonathan Haidt, I think. There are many social scientists who can point to these trends, and it's a very obvious thing. If the climate breeds violence, you will ultimately have a violent act happening. It's as simple as that. And so we shouldn't be
Oh, you
surprised.
know what though, Saf?
The Yeah, go
Just to
ahead.
add to that, I remember hearing another thing where kind of like right after everyone's looking for Biden's reaction, right? And so, of course, again, we're not left, right, but of course, he's like, "This is why it's so important for us to unite, to come together, and any kind of act of violence
Oh,
is, of course, despicable." You know, that's his position now, but
right, right.
a couple of days ago,
That's nice. That's really, really interesting to see. I mean, clearly the source from which most of the incitement happens is the political campaigns. I mean, that along with what the media is doing, because it essentially supports one campaign or the other, that creates the constant warring climate that society is in. This is not just true for America. It's very, very true for where I'm here, you and I, Chris, here in Israel. It's very true for, I think, most Western countries, where there's this stark contrast between left and right, and there's a constant belligerence, belligerent climate in the air, hostility in the air all the time, between left and right and left and right and left and right, all of that all the time. So this breeds violent acts. First of all, let's just be, if we want to see the forces creating, this is something we can see in our world without even understanding nature's program and the deeper spiritual reality and where it's leading us. This is just social psychology. If this is what our politics looks like, and that's what society looks like, that's what will happen. So no one should be surprised about it. And then, if you're not surprised about it, it is such a hypocrisy to hear people then, right after such a thing happens, saying, oh, there's no place for violence in our society. Right, but there's place for inciting each other towards violence for months and months and months in order to win
years.
a vote. I mean, so we live in such a distorted social climate that it's such a, nowhere you look you can find like anyone who's actually taking everyone else into account, who has everyone's best, the best of everyone in mind. This is where we're at. We're in this constant sort of conflict between us in society, and so millimeters away from civil war is where we are, even regardless of the bullet. I think that's the first thing that nature, or our
Right.
state reality, whatever you want to call it, the state of affairs, this is what it's showing us. The fact that this bullet missed his head by a few millimeters, that's just an opportunity for us to see that we are right now still millimeters away from social collapse, from social violence, from not getting along with each other to the point that we are about to get into war with each other. In not just in American society, this is everywhere. This is everywhere in the world right now. And that's the state of affairs. That's really where we are. We are millimeters away from something really bad happening. And again, this is not just from a Kabbalistic perspective. We're all familiar with with that Doomsday clock, right? There's a bunch of scientists. You know what? Let me pull up the page for a second.
An actual clock, you mean? It's like
Th-
a legitimate
there you
thing that
go.
people really do pay
I got
attention
it. I
to.
got it. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay. This is what is known as the Doomsday clock. So there's a bunch of scientists, atomic scientists, This is the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, right? And what they do, what they've been doing with this project essentially is they're trying to visualize how close statistically we are to a nuclear war. And if you put all of those probabilities onto a clock, where midnight on the clock symbolizes the moment at which humanity goes nuclear, we have 90 seconds left. So this is what very smart people, atomic scientists, are
Muted, Seth,
saying.
muted.
You're muted, Seth.
Yeah,
So
God
we're
forbid,
millimeters away from this. It's not just
God forbid
Trump.
some
Yeah.
nuclear war happens. Um, people be like, how did it come to this? I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's like,
This is what the political people are, what the politicians are sounding like today when they say like, "Oh, there's no room for violence in our society." you know, this shouldn't have happened. Well, if you didn't want that to happen, you wouldn't be contributing to such a system. That's where we are.
what else
But
is
yeah.
interesting is how we moved, and you see how it needs to be in the 1950s. This country was still more Christian, more religious, more patriarchal in a sense. Father went out to work, mother stayed home, raised the kids. And then there's this development in humanity where it's like, well, I don't believe in a God that I can't see and in some kind of hocus pocus of where do I go when I die. And also I'm a woman and I'm pretty smart. I can be a doctor too. Um, so all of those um, guardrails around how humans conducted themselves were taken down, and anything goes regarding sexuality, regarding money in the workplace, and a lot of these things came down. And um, uh, and also after thousands and thousands of years of slavery in the United States, this is where it ended. So yes, it was messy here, but it ended here. Uh, it existed in every other place until it got here and then ended. It's not clean, but it's working its way out. But now, like after all those guardrails went down
Hmm.
around the family,
Why you say it's a guard? Why are you saying guardrail?
meaning
What is a
like for
guard?
example, so I
Well,
remember
but
speaking to my
basically, the
grandma
traditional family unit is undergoing major disruption, as an understatement, all
today.
across
If
the
a woman
Western
isn't
world.
happy,
There's no doubt.
person's
The
not happy, just
traditional
get
structure,
divorced.
the conventional structure of a family, of what we were all used to for hundreds of years as the family unit, that structure is called into question in the last few decades, and all the
And
more
that's
so
dangerous to
since
society,
then.
kind of, is
No,
what
no,
we're
no.
saying.
Not talking, not making any judgment, just observing it first. Just saying we were here in this conservative way, then we swung through the 60s, 70s, 80s,
Hmm.
all this way. And now with this whole Trump thing, and it's so funny the way that the creator works it. A guy who's got babies with three women, a guy who owned the Miss
Hmm.
Universe pageant, a guy who
Forgot
is
about
like
that.
right, like a Playboy guy
Hmm.
is now the candidate. So it's just funny how the whole thing works out. And I'm sure he's having a big come to Jesus moment after you miss a bullet like that. And
Yeah.
you have all of these traditional conservative people praying for you all the time.
Hmm.
There's this swing now to like, hold on, maybe there are genders. Maybe it is good to stay married.
Hmm.
Maybe like we should have more family values. So the whole society
It's like doing
like
this
swings
reevaluation.
like a pendulum. And so now there's this swing that's like this momentum back, and it's so messy the
Hmm.
way the whole thing because as it happens, all of the forces mix with each other. Right? It's not like you don't see the person rise now that it's swinging back to the right. You don't see that the person who's rising up is some guy who never masturbated once in his life and had one wife since he was 15. He dated this girl from 16 years old and ended up marrying her. And that's it. He only had sex to have children. And he's got a couple children and a white picket fence and a dog, like, and he's no, it's a guy who like owned a beauty contest and married three women and did kind of all kind of weird, like everything gets mixed in the process of
Mm-hmm.
this swinging. As nature develops this, all of the
Mm-hmm.
pieces mix as it swings back and forth and picks up
S-
qualities from both sides.
So let's
Special
add
times.
some Kabbalistic context, like spiritual context, spiritual development context to what's happening. I would
Yeah.
say the first thing we need to sort of try to see is that the mess, the chaos in society, it's not chaos yet, but it's very messy. Like the fact that there's the breaking of the family unit, and the fact that so many people are questioning their gender and and orientation,
Wealth
and
distribution.
well, yeah, that too. The fact that, like you said, the poster boy of what is it? Like
Playboy lifestyle.
yeah, that that is like all of a sudden the symbol of the a movement that is supposed to be like more conservative. Very weird. That messiness that we're seeing, this is part of humanity's collective spiritual development. It's still not conscious development. It's still a preparation for, let's say, spiritual development, but it is a move. We're moving forward. This is something that is supposed to happen. It needs to happen. It doesn't have to happen, to the point of chaos. But yes, humanity needs to ask itself. We need to ask ourselves deep questions about what are we doing here, and that comes with all kinds of other questions about what is my role in society, if I'm a woman, if I'm a man, what is the role of sexual preferences, are we supposed to just go by some biblical rules from thousands of years ago? What about, we have science today, we have technology, we have engineering, we were a modern society, we can maybe come up with a completely different kind of way of life. We are questioning the family structure and the traditional structure of society, the role of men and women. We're questioning everything. This is a preparation, I would say, for spiritual development en masse. The fact that the gender thing is also a very, very telling sign of that, because those forces of male and female, they don't just it's not just an invention we came up with. All of nature is divided to male and female in a very interesting way, to the point that it's in the atoms, it's in the plus and minus of the quantum world, it's everywhere. It's ebb and flow and extraction and expansion, and in and out, and light, night and day, and light and darkness. It's everywhere. It's in our inhale and exhale as we breathe. We are living between these two opposite forces that also manifest as male and female in human society, and we
Oh,
don't
Asaf,
know and we don't know how to work with them. What? Sorry? What?
a cool little factoid here,
Yeah.
just to kind of paint the picture about how much we don't know about this male and female force. That it's still today we get kind of this news flash of, okay, we have no idea nature's how nature operates. Just recently, I don't have it on hand. I just remember reading it, that there was kind of this assumption, or this was the theory, that when a sperm is trying to make it to the egg, that it's who's the best swimmer and who makes it there, and you go little guys, you can make it, and the one guy he breaks through, he's the one that succeeds. Turns out, actually, that the egg has basically this choosing mechanism where it chooses the sperm and allows it to be the one that penetrates and fertilizes. So
Mm,
that wasn't the factor, at least as of a couple of weeks.
When
nice.
we like
Interesting.
in the modern world, when we uh, don't relate to any of the natural laws, so then like all the borders, so the wheels start coming off the cart. Like on the one hand, everyone wants to have and everyone should have individual freedom. to explore ideas, to discover who they are. On the other hand, we're in a fixed system. It's like throwing someone into water who doesn't know how to
Yeah.
swim. It doesn't matter if you want the water to be merciful. It doesn't matter if you create laws of DEI that the water should save you. There's the laws, you'll drown, right?
Yeah.
So if we don't acknowledge, and that's like the purpose, guys. I wasn't trying to be political at the beginning, but showing that newspaper article, like if we don't stop, if we don't guard ourselves from listening and following every single thing that people try and hook us with all day for their own agendas, and we stray away from understanding fundamental laws of nature, not only will we not be successful in this world, meaning you
Yeah.
can still make a lot of money, you can just go rob someone and get a lot of money. That's not what I'm calling success. Success meaning like feeling fulfilled and having good relationships around and being healthy. You also won't be able to even approach anything eternal. You won't be able to even come close to anything spiritual because there's mechanics towards this process. And you have to start working with these forces. You have to be able to identify the forces within yourself. Where are these plus and minuses? How do I use them?
Yeah. The you said how, part of our development, I would even say part of our spiritual development is to become disillusioned by, by all of the different kind of forces that work on you in this world, and just kind of see that there's a simple egoistic agenda at the end of the day behind any news piece you encounter, any headline, any political candidate, doesn't matter what side. At the end of the day, we live in an egoistic society, an ego-driven world, where people are basically working to try to maximize their benefit. And that's an agenda that exists behind everything that we encounter in the world. And then the next stage of spiritual development is, and Debbie was asking in the chat, what are natural laws, or what is natural laws? I would put it like this: we have to, as a society, like humanity's true spiritual development will begin when we will start being interested in what is nature's agenda. That's the thing we're not even asking. Like, we're put
Didn't know there
here
was such a thing.
on, exactly, we don't even exactly, but we're put here on this earth. We are developing according to laws of nature that we understand to some extent. We see that they're there from a biological perspective, physics perspective, chemistry perspective. We can see that nature is pushing evolution, is evolving the species in some way, but we tend to completely ignore the question of what laws, what natural agenda, what evolutionary agenda exists behind everything that's happening to us as individuals and as a society. Our intentions towards each other, how we feel each other, how we fight with each other, how we try to complement each other, our desires, our thoughts, our intentions, our inner worlds as humans, that too is part of nature, and we have to discover what nature is doing with us on that level. And that is the point from which we can begin to become conscious participants in our own evolution. That's what we call spiritual development. That is still not the case with, human society at large. But
Hmm.
I mean, I
So you
think that,
mean
yeah. Go ahead.
so you mean whenever I see this guy, I don't remember where it was. It was, I was watching the news feed. Of course, the news was playing over and over the clip of, the of Trump being rushed off or whatever off the stage, and you can see people in the crowd, kind of in the foreground of the frame, and you see a bunch of people like looking around, all don't know what's going on, and one of the guys, you can just see the anger in his face. He's even like gritting his teeth and he's flicking off the direction where the gunshot was heard. You know, he like
Mm,
everyone's looking in that direction, so he knows he's probably from there. And
mm,
he's just mad at that area. You know, it
mm.
doesn't. It's like there's on one hand you can get doesn't matter. You can extrapolate that to political
Mm-hmm.
people who are holding some important chair, and it's their fault. It's the shooter's fault. It's my boss. It's my wife. It's, whatever it is. It's always kind of seems, we have this very narrow tunnel vision of,
Mm-hmm.
blaming or basically what you're saying is it's a lack of understanding that there's kind of this that we're in this bubble of nature which has its own laws, and those laws are also acting on
Yeah.
us, and it's no different.
Where are we? Why are we here and where we're headed? As a society, as individuals, that is something that is still not awakened in most people. The vast majority of people, they just drown in the currents of life, and that's why they're more easily influenced also by mainstream media agendas and politicians and the whole left and right constant swing. I mean, didn't we already see from history that no side really dramatically changes things for the better? Didn't we see that? Don't we understand that as long as we don't find a way to complement each other, that the endless conflict just produces more troubles, more problems? Again, this guy does that, and then the other president from the other side comes and does this, and then he repeals what he did, and then this guy does what that did, and now we're fighting on this, now we're fighting on that. Now we have to, as society, as a human society, we have to start asking ourselves, okay, we have different opinions. We all have individual egos. We all have views. We all have, our own individual personalities. Let's start thinking, how do we complement each other to create something that works for everyone, to create something for the whole? I'm not saying this is easy to do. This requires getting into it. This will ultimately lead us to spiritual development, where we come to an existence of wholeness, where we don't eliminate each other's differences. We rather connect them in a new way. So we achieve this a certain kind of harmony, a synergy, a mutual complementarity, a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of wholeness that comes about from different things, disparate things coming together, creating a new whole. That's a higher level of evolution, but I'm saying let's just listen to the hints. Let's see what kind of reality we're in. We're all becoming interdependent all across the globe. Every little thing, a 20-year-old can climb on a roof and bring us millimeters away from a civil war or civil unrest. This would change the world if this would happen. A few days ago,
Yeah.
we're still there. We're millimeters away. It's a very fragile planet, and we have to at least start moving towards, okay, how do we do this? How do we start
So if you take
collaborate? We're
the
not there
group,
yet. That's my my just
you know,
my.
Yeah.
the groups who
Point.
don't believe in anything,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's much to say at first except to work with them also strictly with science, and that's what we've been talking about now. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
forces in everything you study in reality.
Mm-hmm.
For the ones who do believe in God, um, like either they think like my God is going to beat up your God. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I don't know, like in Northern Ireland, the Protestants and the Catholics, it's like, guys, you have the same God, you have the same Jesus. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like here you have the right, the Trump supporters who are Christian conservatives who believe in Jesus. It's like guys, your God made the people you're fighting against. It's all part of one system.
Yeah.
Let's like change the
Uh-huh.
mindset that like our God and what your God who made the universe is not
Mm-hmm.
powerful enough to like defeat another political opponent.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, your God made this system with these opposing forces in order to work correctly with the opposing forces.
Oh,
You're
okay.
trying to kill what your God made.
Yeah, this is gonna be a little bit maybe uh, to a bit hardcore in terms of ambitious. For we don't have a lot of time left, also. But I mean, this you're touching on the point that I think Baal HaSulam, the great Kabbalist of the previous century, wrote exactly about that in the Peace article. One of the points he makes there, if you kind of summarize what he says there in kind of the last third of the article, is that if we want to be any society that actually wants to achieve peace, we have to bring two concepts to become one. And one of them is the concept of a higher force, a greater force of nature that is governing all of reality and human society, and all the laws of nature are essentially different aspects of this system, this one thought, one system, one program. There, it doesn't matter how you call it nature, call it God. Kabbalists don't care, as long as you understand you're in a system and it has laws. So that, and it's upper to you, it's greater than you. You didn't create it, it created you. That's what we need. That's the first thing we need as a society. The second thing is we need to connect that with cultivating a culture of peace. Because basically, if you detach those things, then you end up with exactly how our world looks like. If you just have a belief in some higher force, you end up with some sort of a religious society. Could be better, could be worse, but everyone can interpret God any way they want. And you could end up with a very dangerous situation, which we are battling with today, where some societies could decide that my God tells me that I'm supposed to kill everyone else, and that's how I get to God. So the concept of an upper force, a higher force, must be married with the effort to build a culture of peace between us. That's the second element.
Let me layer.
These
let me
two
layer
have to
something on top of
come
this.
together. Without, go ahead.
No. Lay the foundation. Then I want to put another layer on top of it.
So the only solution to it, from a Kabbalistic perspective, is that the two become one. God, or the higher force, the upper force, nature's system, doesn't matter how you call it. What it is that force of bestowal, connection, and love that doesn't exist in our nature, and we have to achieve it. That is what the universal God is. Now, how you worship that God and how and all kinds of customs that each religion has, that can stay. That's not a problem, as long as you understand that ultimately the main quality towards us of that higher force of nature is a quality of love, bestowal, giving, connection, unity, oneness. That's what nature's all-inclusive system, all-inclusive governing force is about. And now, if we're working to build a society of peace, we have to include making contact with that force. These two have
this
to
is
come
the
together.
foundation.
Yeah.
Let's put another layer on top of it. So Gene wrote in the chat, "This world sucks." So
True.
Gene, it's by design.
By design,
There's
yeah.
another thing. We think that all of the problems are some surprise. All of the shattering, our teacher said it this week in one of our lessons, that all of the shattering of the soul, let's say, of that unity, already happened. The shattering already happened. So all that's happening now when we see a problem means a part of the shattering has appeared in order for us to correct it. I hope that you can grasp what we're saying at this point in the show, because it changes your entire life. If some separation, some problem arrives, that means that in the process of reuniting the common soul, now humanity is given an opportunity to unite a certain piece of the creation that was already shattered. Long time
So
ago.
these troubles, these problems, the social conflicts, everything, all of that is part of our development. And we have to
and our
become
job
conscious
is
of
to
it.
figure out how to correctly do what you said at that foundational level. Oh, look at, and that's why for Kabbalists, the whole thing is like a theater. It's like a game. oh, look at what's
Yeah.
revealed now. Look at these two opposites that reveal inside of me. Look at the lie that I just revealed. Now, how do I
Th-
bring these
this
things?
this world, this entire world, and everything that's happening to human society that every one of us is witnessing is like a simulator for me to correct my soul,
Nice.
to awaken spiritually, to develop consciously towards the greater plan. It doesn't matter how you call it. Um,
I
yeah,
got a
thank you.
I got a quote. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you see this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
yeah.
Hmm.
This is from Baal HaSulam. And he says, everything in
Maybe
reality.
maybe blow it up a little bit more if you can. Yeah,
That's it.
even
That's as
more.
big as it gets.
Okay, okay, that's good.
That's it. Everything in reality, good or bad, and even the most harmful in the world, has a right to exist and must not be destroyed and eradicated from the world.
Wait,
We must
pause.
only mend and
Give it a
reform
second.
it
Give it a
because
second.
any, okay,
Yeah.
everything in reality, good or bad, and even the most harmful in the world, has a right to exist and must
Mm-hmm.
not be destroyed and eradicated from the world. We must only mend and reform it because any observation of the work of creation is enough to teach us about the greatness and perfection of its operator and creator.
Ooh. So when you see nature, look at your body, look at organisms, look at ecosystems. There are all of those conflicting forces everywhere. There's plus and minus and males and females and predators and preys and things that plants that do photosynthesis and then animals that eat those plants and all kinds of conflicting and opposite functions that are creating perfection. That's how nature works. It brings different, disparate pieces, opposite forces. It brings them to a higher level of connection, to a completion, to a perfection. That's what's happening to mankind as well. And we have to see it. We have to be conscious of it. We have to learn it also, just to understand where we are, to understand what nature's doing with all of evolution, with all of life, and understand that it applies to us as well. Then we'll take our conflicts in a different way. We'll relate to our differences in a different way. We'll see them as opportunities to achieve a higher level of connection rather than just opportunities to eliminate each other or eradicate the other side or mute the other side or kill the other side, right? And that's where we're at. That's the really the
If
big thing, the big fork in
if
the road
something
for
like
humanity.
if
Yeah.
something like this assassination attempt never happened, we would have never known that we were at this precipice, millimeters away from this. We should now start to feel that we're as if millimeters, or as the doomsday clock says, 90 seconds uh, before uh, nuclear war.
Yeah.
Like, feel it now.
Exactly.
Feel now that these things are revealing towards us in order for us inside of ourselves to try and unite the opposites. You don't have to vote for both parties. You can do whatever you need to for your family and where you live, but in your heart, that's what's going to determine. That's the integral network between us all. Each one, start connecting the opposites in your heart. Start making room for the opposites in your heart. It doesn't mean let every stranger into your house and sleep in your bed. That's not what it means, but it means in your heart, start seeing the things that are revealing. Start cutting away the crap of the people who are trying to distract us all day long. Try and understand what are the forces of nature and how can I balance them inside of me. Adding this, each person who does this, it's equal. I think HVAC asked, what about the masses? Each person who does this, it's equal to 10 million people as actions, physical actions. You affect, I don't know what the number is. I just made that number up. You affect many, many multiples because of the quality of the action.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
one guy on the construction job tells 10 guys to move the bricks. Like, right? Like, the intention of one guy gets 10 guys to move the bricks. That's what we're talking about here. And
Mm-hmm.
each one who's able to do this process inside aligns himself or herself with the process of nature and affects
Yeah.
many, many multiples in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Just feel like saying the same thing in different words. You're looking at the world, you're listening to what we're saying, you might feel discouraged, like, it's gonna who's gonna be able to change this whole political, because everything's gotta go. Everything has to change. Let's not sugarcoat it. Humanity has to go through a revolution. We have to start thinking completely differently about governance, about politics, about power in society, about making decisions. It's not going to happen, overnight, and it's not going to be easy, but we can make it easier. We can make it faster. That's what Seth is saying, because the movements of the human heart, millimeters of the human heart moving equals, miles and miles, or kilometers, or whatever, like a much greater number of movement in the physical world. So those who are listening to this and can calibrate their hearts, you're doing a lot, not just for yourself, but for the whole system, because we're all connected. And the thing that influences the system most is that, the intention, the aim of your heart, of the human heart. And that's what moves and changes the world ultimately. That's what will change it from the inside out. Yeah, go ahead.
That's why this is the great transition. Great transition.
Chris,
It's
somebody asked for a link
great.
to the article that you quoted before. If you can post that.
Wait a second. I don't have a link to the article,
right.
But I do have a link.
I'll look for it in the meantime.
That's an associative plug here. We should tell people that there is an opportunity. We do this twice a year in our KabU, which is our educational environment for teaching the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. We are holding events twice a year. We call them KabU retreats, and in those retreats, it's an event. I'm not going to say a lot about this. We don't have time. It's a 3-day event. You can participate physically and virtually, and you can there really experience how it's like to be in an environment where everyone works to calibrate their hearts, where everyone works to make a subtle change in their intention towards reality, others, the world, everything, spiritual development, and feel how that environment, what it does to you, how it elevates you, giving you a strength that you didn't have to rise to a higher level of development, to feel closer to the spiritual level of reality. That is why we're holding these events. Let's throw some links in the description to those who are might be interested. The registration is up. You can go check out all the details and register to the KabU retreat physically or virtually. So let's post some links in the chat, and we'll be talking about this more. The next retreat is in September. That's why we're starting to mention it. First week of September, 6th through the 8th. So I'll put a link in the chat in a second. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Finish my plug. Sorry.
That about wraps it up for us, I guess. Probably. We're gonna have to meet again next time.
Next week.
See you then, guys. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
One for all and all for one. Who's right or wrong don't matter none. We're talking about survival of the human race. Connecting love or burning hate. Which one will be our common fate? It's time for the arrival. A unity, y'all get it straight.